After working decades to support yourself and your children, wouldn't you be devastated if one small mistake, just one little tiny mistake, could cause you or them to lose and miss out on everything that you've stored up for them? After building the business of your dreams, can you imagine losing it because you didn't do that one little thing that could have prevented a disaster? Imagine the family house that's been the family for decades being sold away on the open market because you didn't do one little thing that could have prevented that from happening. Your dreams of leaving a grand legacy can be gone in an instant with these common mistakes we're going to talk about today. I'm attorney Tina Patterson. After 10 years of practice, I am eager to share with you 10 of the biggest legal disasters I've seen that could turn these dreams into nightmares. I encourage you to follow along and subscribe to our channel, as I will only be covering 3 today because it can be quite a lot. But we'll come back again next week and unveil more. All right. So, the first small little mistake that you can make, which is it becomes a huge mistake, is to allow your legal problems to linger for decades. Okay, I used to have a saying when it came to kind of anything in life, right? We see problems happening in the world. I wonder if we can do anything about it. I used to say that if you do nothing, nothing will happen. But if you do something, something can happen. Now, I've since modified it a bit. Wisdom has taught me this, okay? Wisdom is a great teacher, don't ignore it. So instead of saying, if you do nothing, nothing will happen. But if you do something, something can happen. I now say, if you do something, something can happen. But if you do nothing, things will only get worse. Okay? They don't stay stagnant, they don't stay neutral. You don't pick it up or put it down in one condition and pick it up in the same condition. No, it gets worse. It gets worse over time. All right. The time compounded interest doesn't get accounted for the way that we really need to take it into consideration. All right. Think of a house in disrepair and how that becomes building blight, right? Overgrown weeds. The structure starts to crumble, weather damage, years of neglect only worsen the condition. It's, again, never in a state of neutrality if we just pick up later and carry on the way you had been. All right, never does that happen. The same is true of legal issues. The longer you allow the issue to linger, the more challenging and the more difficult it becomes to solve. And this can be for so many different factors. All right, people change, number one. First of all, people are people. You're always going to deal with them at the end of the day. And when it comes down to it, at the end of the problem is usually maybe a person involved. Okay. But that doesn't mean that you just ignore it. You have to you have to face that fact. People change, you need to deal with that. You need to deal with people. All right. Their attitudes change, behaviors change, social norms change. The law changes. Okay. So it might have been legal 20 years ago. It might be illegal today. And that makes it more difficult, if even possible, to try to solve your 20-year-old solution because you didn't do it back then. And now that solution doesn't even exist. So what do? Right? Everything gets more expensive over time. We see this, we feel this every day with needs such as grocery and gas. We see this in the health arena when it comes to bad habits that compound, like smoking, how it can lead to lung cancer, consuming junk food and a lot of sugars and sweets, how that can lead to obesity and diseases like hypertension, and what's the other big one with sugar? It's on the tip of my tongue. You guys know what it is. Diabetes, that's it. Okay. But like it's just one small, donut, and then it's a donut every day, and then it just compounds into this big issue, right? The same is true of our legal problems. Oh, one small disagreement here. Well, it compounds day after day after day after day. And not only does this cost more in the future, not just more in terms of money. All right, I'm talking about right the amount of money you have to pay to solve it. But the money actually decreases each year in value because of inflation. So you're always going to be paying more later. Okay, it might be $10,000 to fix it today. Next year it might be $12,000. Right, just a year it costs $2,000 more. All right, and not to mention it could have been done without even the $10,000 if you would have did it sooner, because now maybe it requires the assistance of attorney. So you have to pay for an attorney. Whereas before you didn't. Maybe you did have a little bit of leeway to fix it, but you didn't. And so now it's going to cost attorney fees. And like I said, the longer you push it out, the more expensive it's going to become. All right. And money is just one factor. The stress and tension involved. Okay, especially when it comes to people, especially if it involves family relationships, this can increase significantly, often to the point of no return. All right. It always costs less to handle the situation as soon as possible. Okay. And that is number one. With a legal disaster, number one, that can lead to destroying your legacy dreams. And we'll bring it all together at the end, right? Your legacy dream, your dream of leaving this huge, just beautiful plan in place, property, the wisdom, all that stuff to your children, to your employees, if it's a business, to the charities, everything. But if you have this problem, maybe it's just a problem of I haven't done my estate plan yet. I'll just put it off. You don't get that time back, and it's not guaranteed. Okay, especially when it comes to estate planning, you don't want to wait. And we'll get into it as we continue to go along. So that's number one, is just putting the legal problems off for as long as possible. Number two is related, but a little bit different, and that is failing to update or review prior legal plans. I had old legal plans in my notes. Prior. It doesn't even have to be old. Prior legal plans, all right? So over the years, I've seen multiple families just in disarray, torn apart, trying to fit outdated plans into the modern day. Okay, this is very common with estate planning because many think of it as a one and done event. Okay, I got my estate plan done. I have my will here. I have my trust, right? I named these beneficiaries over here. I did that today, let's say in 2024. I'm set. And that's not true. Okay, because there's a common misconception with estate planning. It's like you have to do it when death is like on the horizon, right? When you're on the deathbed and you're signing the will. No, 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 no. That's not how it works. You should not wait until then. Okay. So just because you're getting the plan in place doesn't mean death is imminent. Don't do that. It is not. Okay. It is actually very wise to prepare ahead of time just because you don't know when the time is. All right. So when it comes to estate planning, people just put it off or they do it and they never look at it again because they think it's a one and done event. They don't want to think about the reality of their own death. But again, here's some news you may have never considered before, may have never thought about it in this way before. There are very few things in life that are one and done. You do it one time, you never do it again. You don't drive one time or even learn how to drive one time and never drive again. Okay, you don't take the kids to school one time and never do it again. You don't go to the grocery store one time and never do it again. You don't prepare a meal one time, never do it again. You don't eat one time and you never do it again. You cannot even live on one breath. Okay. There's not one breath for life. You must constantly breathe to stay alive. And think about this and translate it to when it comes to legal plans. You must continually work on them. Okay. You must review and revise until that last breath. And you don't know when that's going to be. So don't be afraid of it happening. All right. It is a reality, but again, the best way to approach it is to prepare for it. Prepare for it ahead of time, not when it's happening, because you're in a totally different emotional state at that time. All right. Prepare ahead of time. So this would include reviewing previous plans at least annually. Okay, that's kind of a rule of thumb. But even more often as needed, especially in the cases of significant life events where you're adding family members, you're losing family members. This could be marriage, divorce, death of a spouse, death of a child, birth of a child, adoption of a child, right? All these very significant family relationships. It could also be, your business when you start that. How is it going to end? Think about that. I mean, there's very different scenarios, but the most common ones or significant ones when it comes to what you have and who you're going to leave it to are the events that make those factors more significant, like the people and the property that you come into contact with throughout your life. All right. So that is the second. It seems like a small thing because it's like, okay, I have something done, right? But just a little small thing, not changing it can derail the plans and just make it so much more difficult to try to even the plan you have in place, execute it because it's just not the same as the reality that you're facing now. All right. So you want to make sure that you review your plans, your policies, life insurance, a big one, your bank accounts, your beneficiaries, review all that at least annually. And again, more often as needed if you have kind of those additions and subtractions in and out of your life between the time. Okay. And so the third one and the last one we're going to talk about today is one that seems kind of funny coming from a lawyer, right? But it's going to court instead of using a court-free option or a court-free solution. All right. And I'm not talking about like getting a legal Zoom doc. All right. We'll go into that next week, probably. Okay. But I'm talking about other alternatives that can solve your problem without the court headache. Okay, so let me just say this first off. I'm not sure about other countries, but here in America, in the US, it seems like we are fixated, okay, with courtroom dramas. We see it all over television and in the movies. And then we love this notion of fighting it out in court, having our day in court, right? And that might make for good television. And it might feel like, this sense of pride. Oh, I presented my case, and I feel good about just how I showed up. Okay. But rarely, honestly, from an attorney, rarely does it make good legal strategy. All right. Again, this is coming from a lawyer. It's funny. I was recently in Washington, D.C. for a lawyers conference last month. And while I was there, just kind of out on the National Mall, just having a breather before the real events of the conference began, I was just talking to a gentleman in the park, right? And I mentioned that I was there for a lawyers conference. I was a lawyer, etc. And he mentioned that he thought about going to law school because he kind of liked the argumentation, but he didn't want to do that for a living, right? Because it was just kind of stressful, and who wants to do that? And then he just thought about it like, well, but I guess that's what you get paid to do, right? But I told him, just like I tell all my clients, going to court is a last resort. A last resort. It's never the first option. It's almost never the preferable option. It's the last resort. Okay, use up what you can before you get there. It's never somewhere you want to start. And honestly, rarely is it somewhere you want to end up when it comes to trying to solve a conflict. All right. We are so accustomed again to court that we think that we need to go there for all our legal problems. We think that as soon as we have a legal problem, we need to go to court. As soon as we have a legal problem, oh, you're getting a letter from the lawyer. This is not true. Okay. Now, there are some extreme cases where you don't want to fool with whoever's on the other side of that argument. All right. And in that case, yes, we can step up and we can give you legal strategy, first of all, but that doesn't always mean going to court right away. All right. And this is especially true, for instance, when it comes to estate planning. A good, well-crafted, custom plan will, and the power of it is that it has the power to defeat the need to ever go to court. Okay, there are many tools in estate planning when it comes to things like a trust, which one of the biggest benefits is it bypasses the whole probate court process, right? It can take effect right away. That doesn't mean that there can never be challenges to it, which could then be seen in court. But, it's not the standard of, oh, I don't leave anything, because then it automatically goes to court. All right. So trust, a very powerful benefit that they can bypass court. Powers of attorney are especially important because they take effect right now, trust as well. But I have seen so many, it breaks my heart going into court, and I have to sit through or be involved in a guardianship case, right, where somebody physically can't take care of themselves, they need a guardian to look after them. Or even worse, a conservatorship case where somebody may not have the capacity to handle their finances again, so they need a conservator to take over. These are some of the most tedious, some of the most heartbreaking, some of the most powerless court actions I see. To have someone who may not even want that to happen, somebody else exercising the power to do it for them, the power to make them have a guardian, the power to make them have a conservator, and it's just so, it's heartbreaking, and it doesn't have to happen that way. Okay, powers of attorney can bypass that entire process, okay, if it's done well, if it's done by somebody who knows what they're doing. That's why I said it's not always LegalZoom, because LegalZoom doesn't guarantee that either, all right? So there is so much power, so much benefit in being able to bypass any court process because it can be so tedious, so stressful, unnecessarily long. And I mean, you can delay for years on out, the intended outcome if you ever get it. Okay. So an example that just kind of broke my heart. Years ago, I had a client who obtained guardianship for an aging parent, which this opens up then supervision from the court, the scrutiny of the court system, right? They're looking at your transactions. I mean, there's so much oversight, but it didn't have to happen. That's what broke my heart, because it could have been done with a simple power of attorney. All right. But did they know that at the time? Probably not, or else they wouldn't have opted for this years long, just totally time consuming, stressful, expensive, and less than desired outcome of this court process. Okay. It didn't have to happen. And that's what proper preparation can do for you beforehand. So that's the third biggest mistake. Now, how do these things destroy your legacy dreams? They eat into one of your most valuable assets when it comes to this notion of legacy and, how we're not going to be here and how we're going to leave the best, right, for those coming behind us. The only asset we have that's most valuable in doing that is our time. Okay, our time. These mistakes can rob you of time you could have used to prepare with proper planning. All right. Instead of using up the time for rigid and inflexible court systems, court processes, just wasting time doing that. You could have used the time, invested the time in yourself, in doing something like investing in an estate plan that's going to bypass all those issues. Okay. That's going to design your dream legacy, put things in place for who you want it to go to, instead of going to the court process and allowing them to decide. All right. It costs, obviously, money. It costs money that could have been left to support your family, that instead also goes to court with court fees. All right. And other attorney fees. Sometimes attorneys you don't even appoint, which are guardian ad litems a lot of time. Or if somebody has to be appointed for you, you got to pay them. You don't even decide this, but you got to do it anyway. All right. So that's costing you money. And then you can also use the attorney fees you pay your own attorney to invest in a plan that could have been better suited for you without, again, the court hassle. Okay. Instead of, paying them to try to dig you out of a hole in court. I mean, just think about it. What would you rather put your money towards? And another big one is opportunity cost. All right. So allowing your problems to just fester and, thinking that they're going to go away someday, that does not happen. All right. Again, it steals your time, steals your money, steals opportunities, it steals your peace of mind. All right. Because then you're stressing on how to solve these issues when you could have did it sooner, and create swift, simpler solutions. You don't get the time back. You may get the money back. You don't get the time back. You might not get the relationship back if it's, like a family dispute or some other kind of precious relationship. Then you may not get that back. It may cost that. It may cause peace of mind, so much stress. And I mean, that can lead to health problems and challenges. There's just so much. Again, it seems like very small blunders, but they have big consequences and how they can impact your legacy dreams. And this is only 3. Okay. I will share more next week. We are here again Thursday, June 13th, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But I hope so far that this has been helpful. If it has, please do share and subscribe for more as we continue on our mission to educate and empower you on your journey to legacy. Thank you.